My name is Anatalia Vallez, and I wrote a book. It's called The Most Spectacular Mistake. And this Sunday, April 26th, I will be having a virtual book release. And if you want to get more information, just keep watching. So I will be virtually launching my book, The Most Spectacular Mistake, on Sunday at 6 p.m. on Instagram Live. We might be doing a YouTube thing as well, YouTube Live, and we're gonna try our best to record it so that people can watch it afterwards, of course, if they can't be online at that time. It's just become it's just become so real, the need to physically distance at this time, but also stay socially connected. And it's very, very exciting to be able to publish a book and have it out there while all of this is happening. Like, I feel so connected with folks, and this is going to be a great space, virtual space, where I will be able to talk to folks and answer questions and share pieces I haven't shared at open mics before. I'm going to try to share a combination of from all the different sections of the book. I'll be sharing some song as well, and I have a couple of special guests. Marilyn Montaño actually just agreed to be with us, and she's a local poet in Orange County, someone that I've known for a lot of years, also through Barrio Writers. John Jairo Valencia, which is the person that made the cover and has been so awesome in being the illuminator of my words, will be sharing a poem. And then I have Iris Tanda, who wrote one of the reviews on the back, one of the blurbs in the back, who I was just really inspired by when I wasn't even in Southern California anymore. And I would notice that I would follow her on Instagram, and I would see all of these updates that she had as a poet, and then curating this open mic, the Poets Underground in LA. And there would be times where she'd be like, okay, there's 3 of us, there's 5 of us. And she would be holding on the space every month, every month, every month. And what I remember the first time I was like, I have to go. When I was back here, I was like, I have to go to LA. I have to make my way there. And I was there, and it was like a full house. And I was like, wow, like the importance of being a poet, but also holding space for other creators, for other poets. And I've always just been so honored by her compassion, and her poetry too has been awesome. And then Chotima, who I met in college, and she's an MC, a rapper, hip hop artist, poet, visual artist, just all around amazing creative, who I never met someone that was just so uplifting and could see things. And I owe a lot of the success of my work and actually being able to have the courage to create something due to her and a lot of my friends who, when I was at my lowest, were like, you're going to be okay. Like, I see something. And having that faith in someone is exactly what I want to share with folks, like through the live that we do, and just in general. This book, it's like it wasn't just me. It was all of these people. And if we I do believe that we can co-create, and like we can create the world we want to see. And seeing that, like, beyond what is right now, and seeing like what can we envision for the future, is really special. So the idea of the book, I have a friend, her name is Sarah Rafael Garcia, and uh, she has been working with youth of color for the past 10, 11 years, I want to say, through Barrio Writers, and that's how I met her. And I really identified with being able to express myself on paper. And she just was so encouraging to teenagers. She never talked down to us. I was around 16 when I met her, and we did a summer program, the first summer program in Santana. And my sister was there, and then I made all of these friends from different schools, different areas of Orange County. And she was just so approachable, and she handed us our first like books with like Chicana writers, and um, it was just such a great introduction into seeing ourselves as Latinas, as Chicanos, like reflected on the page, to see things like even using mama in a poem that was in English. It just gave us a feeling of like, oh yeah, we're on the page, like I can identify with this. And after going to college, I came back and I was just really interested in taking form, taking the writing a little bit further. And with Breath of Fire and coming back and being an ensemble member, I was able to write plays, and so it just seemed like a natural progression of then integrating the plays and the monologues that I'd written, and then publishing that with the poetry that I was writing. I knew that I had to make this book when I could see a theme, or like themes coming together. Uh, I had been working with Teatro Productions based out of Los Angeles, and they're mostly like people of color centered theater ensemble that goes and works with different communities. And I was getting a lot of experience working with formerly incarcerated folks, working with houseless folks in LA, working with unions, and just doing really like ground level like acting and playing. And in one of the scenarios we had to make up a song, and we together we made a song that it was like from the roots to the core to the heart to the head, from the roots to the core to the heart to the head. And then it was like a call and response, and that for some reason just really resonated with me. Like it, I just kept repeating it in my head over and over and over again, and it stuck with me. And it just so happened that like I had all of these papers, of all these poems, all these things, and I thought, well, I don't know if I have all the components for just like roots, or just to talk about my ancestors and my lineage. I don't know that much about them. And I don't I want to honor these love poems that I have, and these things about like relationships, but I don't want my book to be about that. And I have all these things about like the social justice and the anger and depression and anxiety, but I don't want to get just stuck there. And then I had all of these poems about like affirmation and very more spiritually connected, and more in the kind of work that I'm working on right now, as I speak myself, that I find really healing for me to like kind of say out loud and to speak. And so I was just like, oh, roots, core, heart, and head, like the crown. And I was like, oh, it just kind of came together in that way. And I was like, I can make it my own thing. It doesn't have to fit a box of like, well, there's never been a book like that before. Like that's when I realized like, oh, I can do something, and I can do it my way, and I can make it different. So I think as humans, I think people say like there's two needs: to be heard and to be seen. And I think art is a really great way to be a mirror to one another. And what I want folks to get out of this book is how, even though you may not understand what my life circumstances were, there's actually some poems that are just in Spanish. And I didn't want to touch those poems and try to change them. But there are a lot of poems that are translated, that are in English and in Spanish. And so I think it's a space to listen, and then also to inspire the reader to dig deep into their own roots. I think something happens when we don't have the privilege or the access to know where we come from, for better, for worse, the consequences of our ancestors, what is where they came from, that it's this loss of home, or like this loss of like identity that a lot of folks don't have access to, and it's this privilege that I have. And so even the idea of just like, well, I know one uncle that would say this story, or like investigating for folks to investigate their own roots, or to investigate where they come from, um, can be very grounding, and in that way can hold space for more, can hold space for learning more about yourself, having more compassion for others, feeling like this connection. We've all felt depressed, we've all felt anxious, we've all felt like a, with a lack of identity, or like confused about our identity, or do we belong to this or that. And so I think if folks can get that from the book, I do dedicate it to survivors of violence. So I center survivals of systemic violence, of interpersonal violence, wars and stuff like that, because I do feel like, as someone that has survived like a level of violence and trauma, that it is my responsibility to, as a survivor, and changing the narrative of like the victim, or like people feeling sorry for me, and saying, well, we also have a voice. And hopefully folks who feel that feel empowered to also share their voice. It was important for me for it to be bilingual, because a lot of my family mostly speaks Spanish, and my grandmother actually doesn't know how to read or write. And so language is actually a really powerful thing, and it's something that I don't take for granted. Um, I mean, that, if anything, that's the catalyst to why I write. Uh, our stories haven't been documented. The history of my ancestors and my family surviving in Orange County, and then how I've sort of kind of been more disruptive in the way that I've decided to make art, and decided to go against the grain, perhaps, or not assimilate completely. Um, words are powerful, and in the case of um, Barrio Writers, and now Sarah Rafael Garcia working on Libro Móvil, which is a bilingual like bookstore that they're still functioning right now, like online. She says that the first books that go are in Spanish, because so many people want to read books in Spanish. There's a huge, huge need for that. And as someone that has tried to um, try to understand the complexity of, like, even Spanish was a colonized, like a language that was used to colonize folks. And then there's a little bit of Nahuatl there in there, because my grandparents spoke that as well. um Language is just a thing. Like, it's we speak English in a different way that people in Texas speak English. The way that, families in mixed languages like speak English. And so why not make it something that is complex, that is how the way that I would speak to someone, the way that I would kind of interpret things, um, and then like using the different parts of the brain. California, especially, and I think the U.S. it's predominantly like, it's. I think people are coming to the understanding that it's not just English that folks speak. There's so many other languages that are out there. And some poems just, because I have access and I have the ability to speak both languages, is some poems just come out in Spanish, and I have to honor that they're just as valuable and just as important without using italics, without using them in quotes, that they are as valuable for a reader as the English language. We wanted to just have the book out, the physical like book out, but that is something that, excuse me, that's something that I've also been thinking about in the past couple of years, of creating like an audible version, an audio version. I'm working with the small press that usually just focus right now is so far has focused on poetry books, based out of Texas, and Flower Song Press. And I don't know if they have had access to doing audio versions of their books, but I am interested in doing something like that, because I know that that's just such an accessible way in general for folks to read books, and I love listening to audio. And I think it's always nice to hear the poet or like the writer, their cadence and the way that they share a poem. It becomes that much more personal and that much more like intriguing. I feel like there's just so much that Breath of Fire means to so many people, and we're constantly giving shout outs to one another, and we're constantly supporting one another. And I remember when I started doing more open mics and sharing my poetry and being like, oh, this is like this poem gets the people riled up and this and that. And I had, kind of like my set. And Elvia Rubalcaba had me do a feature at an open mic in LA. And afterwards people came up to me and they were like, when are you gonna write, like when are you gonna read your, or when are you gonna write your book? Like they just came up to me, and that hadn't even crossed my mind. I was just like, what do you mean? I just read what's on the paper. Like, it's my paper. And so it's important to publish. It is important to publish, because just as important as it is to have theater out there and to have it accessible to communities, as Breath of Fire has been doing, and now that it's actually in the past couple of years has been working more with writers and actually writing, doing all of that groundwork, and that has been super duper successful. Now with like, who would have thought that uh, without the access to theaters, without the audiences and all of this stuff, we have all of these zines now. People can still buy a zine and be able to read our plays. They still exist. They're still out there, and they're that much more accessible to more people. And so that's just some stuff that we didn't have a plan that could have, that could be possible. And now, we're thinking like, okay, how do we do a stage reading like via Zoom? How do we have the poems, we have the writing, we have the plays, we have the people. Let's just practice this Zoom thing, and we can do it. So it's all kind of come together, and Breath of Fire has been super solid. Everybody in Breath of Fire has been super amazing and supportive, and they've allowed me to like go in and like, okay, today I'm gonna read this monologue. Let me see, like, let me get your feedback and all of this, and I mean, they've just been so great. So without them, I think this book would not be what it is. So you can find me at anataliavallez.com, ANATALIAVALLEZ.com. I have a YouTube page, youtube.com/it's Natalie, ITS Natalie. You can find me at Anatalia Vallez on Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, you can find on my shop on my website. You can find the book. Um, there's some interviews that are hopefully going to be coming out soon, and I want to be able to share some excerpts of the book via like Instagram video or on YouTube, depending on people and the way that they're able to access. And yeah, just copies of my book will be coming. I ran out, but I will be receiving a new batch, and I think it's just a little bit slower with the postal service. But I mean, it's been quite an experience, and I'm really excited. I mean, follow Breath of Fire too, Libro Mobile, all the folks that I've been shouting out throughout this too. Support your local library or bookstore. So support local vendors, folks that are still doing the work in your community, because we all need love and support right now, and to feel that like we're here for one another.